So, Anthony, can you remember the first horror movie that you ever saw, or maybe the first time you got scared by a movie, even if it wasn't like a horror
Hmm.
movie or supposed to be scary?
I watched a lot of stuff that I was way too young for, so it's hard to remember the first. But I know Gremlins was like a staple of my childhood. I watched Gremlins over and over, which did not scare me at all. I was fascinated by it. I think more on the Looney Tunes level, but I do remember having some crazy fever dreams about Gremlins. When I was like sick as a kid and like on Robitussin or whatever they're giving you for to kill a fever. But the time I remember being genuinely scared was Pet Cemetery when Zelda comes on screen. It would literally scare me out of the room. Like, as a kid that loved horror, it became like this mission. Uh, like a personal mission to just like get through that scene and see the rest of the movie. But like I even tried watching it at broad daylight one time and still ran out of the room when she came on screen.
It's funny. I literally only had a conversation with somebody about that movie like less than a week ago, and they said the same thing. And it's funny because Gremlins was the one that I uh would have said was like the movie that probably freaked me out more, which is kind of strange because it's not necessarily a scary movie, but I just have these like vivid memories of like I think it's in particular Gremlins 2. Don't they put Gizmo in like a drawer of like a desk or some shit?
Yeah.
And like they're all like coming out with events and stuff. And I just remember being freaked out by the idea. That was like how grim. I couldn't even tell you what exactly it was that scared me about it, but it was just like so gross.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of those movies. Like, if you just look at a gremlin and you like with no context, if no one knew like how funny and like wacky the Gremlins movies are, you just see a gremlin. It's a terrifying looking creature. It's like such a great creature design. And what an interesting way to go to like make this like Looney Tunes esque comedy, but make these things look genuinely horrific, like they came out of the scariest horror movie ever.
Have you always been like a fan of horror and stuff like that? Like since a young age, has that always been something that's been part of your life?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, even watching like Disney stuff as a kid, and kids movies, I always gravitated towards the scary shit. Like uh, Neverending Story when what's his name the darkness or whatever, this like
Yeah.
crazy ass like horrific wolf puppet comes out of the cave, like that thing scared the shit out of me. The Dark Crystal. Yeah, so even when I was watching kids movies, I gravitated towards the scarier stuff. um but I was watching, yeah, like I said, Gremlins, The Fly, like Cronenberg's The Fly, stuff I was way too young for. But my dad, I remember he recorded like everything off of TV at the time. So there's like all these, VHS tapes with like movies written on the sides of them, and there'd be like 3 or 4 movies per VHS tape, and they're all recorded off like HBO or whatever. And I would just pick them and watch them, and there was like nobody really policing me at the time to know which ones I was grabbing. So I saw a lot of dark stuff.
They probably still have like the old commercials and stuff like that, do they?
Yeah, it's weird. There's some horror movies or just movies in general that I watch now, and I still am expecting it to start with this commercial or have this weird like blip in the middle where he like paused and started recording again over a commercial.
It's kind of crazy because nowadays there's like uh, fans of stuff like that, and everything becomes so nostalgic. Like there's people who would probably pay like really good money
Yeah,
to have those tapes with the commercials still in them.
totally. And there's like a whole new subgenre of horror that is trying to capture that. I think that's at least a aspect of analog horror. Kind of this new like offshoot of found footage. um yeah, it's something I'm fascinated with for sure. And like, yeah, playing with uh the idea that back in the day when we'd watch TV, there wouldn't be something that pops up in the screen telling you what you're watching. So sometimes you'd watch something and be fascinated, and then it's just gone. You have
Yeah.
no way to find it. And like things like Channel Zero and stuff like that, playing with that idea of, I think I saw this when I was a kid, but did I haven't been able to find it since. Did I make it up? Did I dream it?
Do you know what that's actually like a super like uh, underrated thing. I think people don't realize that there was times where you might have flicked on something like halfway through, or like you missed the start or whatever, and there's like no reference point as to like how. And the only real way would be if you talked to other real people and were like, "Hey, I saw this thing, and anybody ever see that before or like know that?" And like if nobody knew, then it was like, well, I don't know, no
Yeah.
way to reference it.
Yeah, I've been able to track down a couple of the things that I had like that, but there's still a couple that I remember like vaguely, and I can't figure out what they were. I don't
I
even
see
have
that.
enough to go off of to explain it.
Yeah, yeah, I see that happen a lot. I think there's actually a subreddit on Reddit where people like post stuff like that and reach out to other people, and like everybody kind of says a similar thing to what you did there, where it's like, did I like is this really a thing? Like, did I see this, or did like is this like some sort of like repressed dream or something I had as a kid that like didn't actually exist?
Yeah, one that I was like really not sure if maybe I dreamed up or not was this bizarre kids movie where, like, I don't know, the kids early on are like, "Mom, I hate you," like, I wish I had a different mother or whatever. And then they enter this world where they can like shop for a new mom. And like the rest of the movie is them kind of like picking a new mom from this like mom superstore, and then like living with her for a little bit, and then realizing, no, I don't, no, she's no good. And by the end of the movie, they realize like, oh, our mom was the best. I want our mom back. And I couldn't even tell you what it's called right now, but I looked it up and I found it. Uh, but that was just such a weird concept, and I didn't have it on VHS or anything. Like I just saw it on TV. I was like, that is such a bizarre, disturbing idea for a kids movie. I thought maybe I dreamt it up for sure.
It's such a good feeling when I like see something like that, and I've definitely had those moments, and then like I'm able to track down what it was, and I'm like, wow, that is wild. Or
Yeah.
I've had like a conversation even like this, and I might have explained something to somebody, and they're like, yeah, I know what that is, or I've definitely seen that, and then like you just kind of backtrack and find out what it is.
Hmm.
Um, when did working in the movie industry or whatever you want to call it become like something that you wanted to pursue seriously as a career?
It's funny. I think I've always been a cinephile since I was a kid, and I dabbled in that without ever really thinking like I want to make my own movie someday. I was actually way more into the idea of making video games when I was growing up. Um, but like I remember seeing Small Soldiers, Joe Dante's movie, and being like just blown away, super obsessed, to the point that I wrote my own sequel to it when it came out.
Nice.
Which I wish I still had, but I had Small Soldiers everything, like all the figures, like the script I wrote was in a binder. Uh and but still, even then, I really never thought I want to make my own movies until I was wrapping up high school, and I was like looking at colleges and trying to figure out like what do I want to go to college for. And I looked at a bunch of trades that would make way more sense, careers that you could actually make money in and sustain your life. And I was like, I think I'd be miserably depressed if I was doing any of this stuff. Like I think movies are the only thing I love. And and that's when it clicked for me, and I like found a community college in Minneapolis where I grew up that had a film program, and I applied and got in. So it was really like just realizing I didn't want to do anything else was when I realized, oh, film is like my favorite thing in the world. Why wouldn't I want to do that as a career?
Do you know what? It's funny. I've had so many of these conversations, and like everybody kind of touches on a similar a similar story or a similar sentiment, as in, uh I couldn't possibly see myself doing anything else. And it's not even like a slight on, I always made that comment about like having a regular job or a 9 to 5 job. But it seems to me to be that people who become successful or get anywhere in this is the people who cannot really see themselves doing anything else or just don't have the desire. It's like I have this thing in me and this is what it is, and I can't let it go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's, to think that you have anything worth saying to like put a bunch of money towards making a piece of art that people should enjoy, like there's a bit of narcissism in it, I think. And I think to think, hey, maybe I'm good enough to succeed in this career. There's a bit of insanity also, because there are so many people trying to do this, so many people that want to do it. It doesn't, like, it's a horrible bet. Like, if we were at Vegas and you were betting on careers, this is like at the bottom of the barrel. You would never bet on it. Um, so it really has to be something where like your soul would just die if you were doing anything else. And that's how I feel. I mean, I wake up plenty of mornings. I'm just like, God, is there anything else I could be happy doing? Because this is just so nerve wracking. You don't have a steady paycheck. You don't know where your next job is. You know, you don't know if you're gonna get a next movie, and if you do, is it gonna be your last one? If it doesn't do well, like it's a little torturous. But I don't know what else I would do, honestly. I know I've been with this for so long. I don't know if I'm qualified to do anything else.
Is that what gets you through those times? I'm often fascinated with that, and like again, it's another one of those phrases I've heard many like creatives, filmmakers, and stuff like that use in the sense of like, yeah, it really isn't like your everyday job. It's so kind of volatile, and like one minute you're like you feel like you're on this, you know, upward peak, and then the next second you're like down in the valley again, going, Jesus Christ, can I get back up there again? Do I even want to? Have I got it in me?
Yeah.
What is it that you think that like keeps you going back? Is it just that burning desire?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, what gets me through those times is having gone through those times so many times that I know it will pass and I'll get through it. Um, but that doesn't really make them any easier. It's a little reassuring, but it still just sucks. It's like when you hit when anyone can relate to like hitting a bout of depression for a couple days, where it's just like nothing seems important and you don't know what the hell you're doing here, and it's just like, God, this sucks. I don't know how to fix this, but hopefully just go outside, get some sunshine, and maybe you'll wake up feeling better tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, there's an aspect of me, a big aspect of me, that's just like a constant dreamer, and like I'm always thinking of new stories I want to tell. And I think I'm always, even when I'm feeling super super low, I can imagine the best case scenario. And I'm like, but you have had six, like you've been doing this for over 10 years, and sure, you're not like, you're still struggling, but like you're doing it. um and you're making things, and you haven't like had anything that anyone's like, oh, that sucks, you should quit. Well, so, I mean, for everything someone says that, but but for the most part, people are like, hey, that's pretty good, you should do something else. So yeah, I remind myself of those times. I mean, sometimes I'll have to journal because my mind is going so crazy, so I'll
Mhm.
straight up just journal, like, people like this movie, you got into film festivals, like, sure, a lot of people thought Frogman sucked, but enough people liked it that you're getting to do a sequel. Like, these are reassuring things. Like, you got to stick with it.
Kind of touching on that idea and that sentiment, you made like some pretty highly regarded shorts to, I guess, start with. Would you say that's the best way for someone that's looking to follow a passion in making movies? Like that idea of having maybe, I hear it time and time again. Like it's great to say like, oh, I have this really cool idea for like a little short thing I want to shoot, and it would look like this and it would look like that, and then trying to convince somebody else to part with their money to allow you to like make this vision or whatever.
Hmm.
But do you think like maybe the idea of having some form of like proof of concept? Well, I can do this with $1,000. This is what it looks like, or whatever. I can do this with 5,000, and have that, kind of in your pocket to say, like, well, here's what I can do.
Hmm. Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't made short films. And I mean, everyone's path is different, but I think making shorts, I made a lot of terrible shorts before before I made one that people thought was okay, and got into film festivals. So like just doing it, simply to hone your craft and make mistakes and learn how to do it, and like find your voice and your style is worth making shorts. But yeah, it's through people seeing the shorts that I had done when I finally got okay at doing it, that got me bigger opportunities, like directing stuff for the scare package movies. um so I think it's absolutely worth doing, and I'd say specifically in horror, if horror is the kind of thing you want to make, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. Like, I made a short that played tons of festivals that we spent about $1,000 on and shot in my buddy's backyard. Like, it doesn't take much. Horror is very forgiving, and as long as you've got like a good kill or a good creature, some good effect, like all is forgiven, right? So, I mean, we like the stuff that's rough around the edges. So, you have no reason to not give it a shot.
Do you have any particular, I suppose, wheelhouse or subgenre that you feel, um, I don't know, more comfortable with, or something you enjoy more? Like, let's say found footage versus slasher versus paranormal, or whatever it might be. Is there any, like, one in particular that you feel overly drawn to?
Mm. Not really. And I kind of, I have friends who have like really created a distinct voice and style for themselves, and I'm like, man, like you're an auteur, like I just have to, like, if I read something of yours, I know it's yours, or if I see even 30 seconds of one of your things, I know it's you. Like you have such a strong voice. Um and it took me a while to be okay with the fact that like I don't really have that, and realizing I don't really want that either. I think I really look up to, as far as like modern directors, Fede Alvarez, Alexander Aja, like these are guys who make brilliant movies, and yet their styles and the genres they play in are all over the place. And I really like that because I want to do horror comedy. I want to do a horror musical. I want to do body horror, found footage, slasher. Like I want to try it all. Like everything I've done has been pretty different from the last thing, and that's not like an intentional thing. Like, I got to try something new. It's just like what I want to do next. Is usually not repeating myself. Um, I mean, even getting to do a sequel to Frogman, uh, we're trying to figure out how to not make the same movie again. Like we're trying to not not force it to be something it's not, but really like the movie we want to make, the sequel we think would be most interesting, is very different from the first movie. Because it'd just be boring to try the try the same thing again. Although, what I really want to do, and what I'm most scared of doing, is like a straight, like heavy horror movie, like something that doesn't have a whole lot of comedy in it is kind of scary to know, like, how do I have the chops to pull that off? And also, like, watching that with an audience, you don't know if it's working or not because there's
Yeah.
less reasons for like audible reactions. Whereas, like, I definitely got addicted to the horror comedy a little bit because getting laughs out of people is a little easier, and it's really kind of gratifying to be sitting in an audience, and people are like laughing at the thing you wanted them to laugh at. You feel like you kind of succeeded.
Speaking of of Frogman, when did you first hear about Frogman as, like, a, I guess, a cryptid, or his lore and whatever? And also, are you a fan of different cryptids?
Yeah, I've always loved cryptids, although finding out about Frogman was a humbling experience. Realizing how ignorant I was as to how deep the cryptid hole goes. Um, because of course I knew about Mothman, Jersey Devil, like the usuals. and learning about this 4-foot bipedal frog with a wand was like, what? Like, why are people not talking about this guy? How have I never heard of this? And that just opened the floodgates to finding out about all these B class and C class cryptids that I think are absolutely fascinating. And at this point, at least, like, I couldn't see myself wanting to make a Bigfoot movie or a Mothman movie, because I want to play with these weirder cryptids that nobody's talking about. But I first heard about him in 2018. My co-writer of Frogman, he was directing a short film, and one of the art like production design pieces was this map of the United States with a cryptid in each state that was hanging on the wall, and so we were all studying it between takes, and looking at all the monsters we had never heard of before. And there in Ohio was the Frogman. That's when we were introduced.
Stuff, because it's like I don't know, I really felt like I'm at a point now where I like, and not a knock on her, but I feel like I've seen everything. I've seen every like trope. I've seen every subgenre, every version of every kind of movie you could ever think of. And then this comes along, and I'm like, Frogman, and it seems like such a, I guess, to think about it in 2023, 2024, in a way, it probably seems to studios or to whatever, some of these like highly opinionated critics, kind of like a counterintuitive thing to do. Okay, we're gonna do a found footage movie about a B or a C class cryptid called Frogman, which is like some frog dude monster thing that carries a wand. Whereas I feel like the audience and the fans have the complete opposite like reaction of that. Like I feel like this thing has taken off. I can't explain how much I have seen stuff about Frogman posted everywhere, from Reddit to Instagram to Twitter, like anywhere you seem to go now. Like obviously I'm within the horror circles, like so it's going to be a little bit more, but like it's, dude, it's everywhere, which is wild that you guys, this isn't some universal backed marketing machine that has $40 million or whatever, but this thing is taken off, like so much so actually I'm waiting on my MILF Man I Love Frogman shirt. I thought it was going to be here today. The delivery date was today, but it didn't show up.
Oh,
um even little things like that, I was like, this is the shit I miss about movies. This is like the stuff that I feel like sometimes now, again, I love those, super high end movies sometimes when you go to the movie theater, but like there's no real tie in. There's nothing for me to be invested in. I just see the movie for 90 minutes and it's gone and that's it. And there's no more like interaction. Was that something that you guys were conscious of when you finished the movie, about like, I don't know, allowing the audience to come into like the lore and like all this other stuff, like the Frogman fucks and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, the funny thing is, I didn't know if anyone was going to care about this. Like, we started making it because we're in the same place you just explained, of like, we've seen everything. Um, and again, I'm never making anything with the conscious intention of like, we got to make something new, or like, this is what people will want. It's just like, as a fan that's seen everything, what's new to me? And there's a lot in Frogman that is not new. There's a lot in Frogman that's like very much playing on the tropes set up by past found footage movies, but there's at least something different about it. Like, I can't see myself ever wanting to like make a carbon copy of something that has proven itself successful. And I think that's where Hollywood like misses the mark so often, is something's wildly successful, and it's usually wildly successful because it's doing something so different and original, and they go, ooh, that was good, let's copy that over and over and over and over and over and over, until they've created something so diluted that the fans will ultimately stop showing up for this thing. And it's like, you guys are missing the point entirely. Like, people want things that they've never seen before. But yeah, so I was like, after 3.5 years, the movie we made was not exciting to me anymore. And I was like, is this good? Is is this total shit? Is anyone gonna care? I wasn't even sure if the name Frogman was enough to bring people in. We talked about different titles. Um, so yeah, I mean, we just gave it a shot, man. All I know how to do is make a movie that I think would be cool, and if I had nothing to do with it, I would want to see. That's where I'm always coming from.
What are some of the other, or if you can even remember, I don't know if you can even talk about it. What are some of like the other potential titles or whatever that you might have had in mind?
Like Finding Frogman or the Loveland Frogman or uh, yeah, the Loveland Monster. I don't know. It was all
Yeah, yeah.
none of them were even like viable options. I just wasn't sure if Frogman was enough, and I'm kind of addicted to absurdly long titles. Most of the shorts I've done are like really really long titles, so it felt weird to just have a one word movie.
Well, do you know what? It's funny because like it worked, and now Frogman, like to me, is somebody who I feel like I will watch anything, I will give anything a chance to a degree. I don't like to, just purposely shit on people's work because everybody else seems to be doing it or whatever. There's often times where I enjoy movies that get just critically panned, nobody likes them, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but like this really feels like it's tapped into something. Like Frogman feels like something that's been around, even though we've only really been introduced to this. But it kind of feels like it's I don't know how to explain it. It's I feel like in a way like a lot of people probably would have said, "Oh, doing found footage in like the modern day is probably like it's going to be so not that it's a bad idea, but it's going to be so difficult to make it seem like you said, mixing what we love about found footage with something new, like a new twist, a new story. How can this be exciting and not just the same thing over and over?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, is that something since this has come out and like you've been, I'm assuming, all over the place with this, all the different merchandise that's come out, from t-shirts and ringer tees and mugs and cups and Blu-rays and even a videotape, which is fucking amazing. I love that. Um, Even the trailer for this, I love. I don't know how many times I watched the trailer. I was like, that is such a well put together. Like, it just gives me enough to go, what is going on? But I need to find out immediately. Like, I have to know what this is. And then the fact that it's just called Frogman, I'm like, Frogman? What's Frogman? And then I have to kind of go and Google what Frogman is. And I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen here? So then I feel like I need to see it. Is that something that you guys have felt since this has come out? Like, has it? And I know nobody's going to sit there and go, "Oh yeah, well, I'm great and everything is great, everything I do is great." But like, have you felt differently since that feeling of like, look, well, is anyone really going to care about this now? Now that you've seen the audience reactions, you've seen how everybody feels about it.
Mm-hmm. I think th- uh, there's a bit of me that has imposter syndrome that's just never gonna go away. um, because
Here,
yeah,
here.
I can tap into reality and be like, okay, it is doing well. People really like it. It's really getting out there. I mean, it was crazy to me when all of a sudden horror fans were like coming up to me and knew who Frogman was. I was like, what? Or the movie. And then people in film that weren't necessarily horror people were like, oh yeah, I've heard of Frogman. I'm like, no way. And now I'll be at a brewery or something, and we're like, my girlfriend's wearing a Frogman t-shirt. It comes up somehow, and they're like, Frogman? Oh yeah, I've seen that. Like, yeah. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I can't believe that it's had the 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 I don't know, distance that it has. Um, and I mean, going into the sequel, it's like we have a little more confidence that people care, for sure. But I'm still like, oh man, can we follow up the first one? Like, are we gonna totally, biff it and fall on our faces? Um, but I think like the one thing that because every time I make something, I have this feeling of like, this might suck. or like no one's gonna get it or no one's gonna care. I don't know if this one's gonna go. And every time, big or small, it finds an audience, and it finds certain people that reach out to me and are like, I really really love this. And that means everything to me, even if that's a small group of people or just a couple of people. Like, it's like, okay, I made this thing for other people to enjoy, and somebody did enjoy it. Because I don't think, anything we've done has been like, great on any specific like technical or visual or whatever. I think it's all, like good enough, at least in my opinion. But the one thing that's always there is like we're doing it from a really genuine place. Like, we're not making a Frogman movie because anyone said they want a Frogman movie and we think that's going to sell. We're making it because we want to see a Frogman movie. Um, so that's kind of always been my North Star, is like, am I making this because I would want to see this movie? And, no matter how it turns out exactly how I thought, or, I'm not incredibly happy with it, I think it's gonna, like, someone else out there is gonna care.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's more what resonates with audiences and fans, is like you can nearly feel that when you watch a movie like this. I don't know. It's like you said. I feel like I'm at the point now where I can sniff out bullshit, and I can like tell the difference between like you said, somebody realized, wait a second, cryptids are doing well. Let's just make a shit ton of cryptid movies and not care about it, and then hopefully we'll make millions.
Yeah.
Versus, people who come together, find this kind of weird, quirky idea, and you're like, you know what, we could probably make something pretty cool out of this. Was the reaction of the audience, and how well, and how many people seem to enjoy it, is that what solidified the the sequel announcement? Is that something you guys were I don't know, had in mind beforehand, or was it just when it started to trend well, it was like, like there's options here to do another?
I think at the point that we put the edit to rest, finally, on the first one, is where we, at least on a creative level, were freed up to be like, oh, what would happen next? I think that's when we were like, okay, the first movie is done. We didn't think about a sequel at all until that point. And before we even knew that we would actually legitimately do one or continue this story in some way, we started hypothesizing, like, what's Dallas going to do next? Like, what's going to happen to these characters that are left alive? Like, you know what is that cult all about? Like, what are the more inner workings of that? Like, we did a lot of we did a lot of stuff in this where we're like, we don't have to know exactly how that works. And so that's been a really fun thing about the sequel, is going like, okay, is there something we can we expand upon that? Can we give that more meaning? How does this actually work in a functional way? Things like that. But yeah, it was after it went to like video on demand, like for rent, and did pretty well, that Rotting Press, our producing partners, came to us and they were like, would you want to do a sequel? Do you have something in mind? And we're like, well, yeah, we've been thinking about it. So that was probably back in March, April, I'd say,
Mhm.
somewhere around there is where we started to get serious about it.
I love the idea of that as well, because I feel like in a movie like this, when things kind of like, I guess when shit hits the fan, so to speak, in this movie in particular, a lot of stuff kind of happens, and we get glimpses of different things, like you said, like about cults and different things like that, and it kind of leaves me going, I can't stop thinking about like what I think my theories are on, like, okay, well, what's that and how does this work? But it leaves like that burning desire to be like, well, I kind of want these guys though to come back and tell me the real. I've made up my own like lore or my own theory, but now I want somebody to come back and like give me maybe a more solid version. And the beauty about that, I guess, of reverse engineering things like that, is there's like, it probably opens up like another big butterfly thing of like all these other questions and potential areas.
Yeah.
Um I know you probably can't say a huge amount about the sequel. Like what kind of time frame could people potentially expect to see this thing in? And are we going to see another like straight found footage movie?
So the plan is to release next year. I can't say exactly when next year, but yeah, we're trying to get this out quickly. Um, Script is pretty much done. We've got a draft that we're just kind of refining right now. Um, as of right now, it will be found footage again. Something we kind of decided immediately, like, is let's try and make it an in-world camera. But if any point we're forcing it, and the story would be better if it wasn't an in-world camera, let's drop it. Like, let's just make the best sequel we can. As of right now, I think it's still going to be found footage. And that was something that was really fun to figure out. Like, I'm a huge found footage fan, and it matters a lot to me. Um, why the camera is rolling, who's behind the camera, like trying to make the operator like a genuine character instead of just an observer. Um, Stuff like that. Yeah, I there's found footage movies that break the rules that I kind of have set in my head that I still love. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but it is kind of annoying to me when like a camera's still rolling and I'm like, this camera is literally only still rolling so that we have a movie to watch, And so
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that's something we took into big consideration when it came to the first one. Is like, okay, we want to shoot it on a high 8 camera, but it takes place in present day. We have to give a good reason as to why they would shoot on that camera instead of something better. um, we have to give good reason why when shit that hits the fan the camera is still rolling. So going into the sequel, the characters that are left alive uh, have been through this traumatic experience and are definitely like they're coming out the other side of the first Frogman movie, different people. So those were really fun uh, conversations to have, and like problems to crack. Is like, who are these characters now? Because you don't always get to like bring back characters in a found footage movie, and that's something that's really fun about this sequel. Is most found footage sequels, you got a whole new cast of characters.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, like, why would a camera possibly be rolling again? After what they've gone through, like, why would there be a camera rolling again? And how do we explain that without the audience calling bullshit immediately?
Um, obviously you've got this sequel greenlit, and I assume from the way you're talking, this is going to continue potentially like straight on from the last story. Is there I know right now it's probably difficult to say, like, but is there any hope of us maybe getting, I don't know, like a maybe, and I don't know, maybe this sequel will explain it, but like I see people online going, yeah, I want this sequel, but then I also want to go back before the first movie and I want like some prequel to explain to me like the lore behind like the wands and all this other shit. Like, is
Yeah.
there potential for something like that, or is that even something that you would want to do if the next movie, goes off quite well?
So we have the prequel. We know the prequel that we would make if we
Oh
get to
wow.
do that. So I think as long as these movies keep doing good enough that people want to put money behind them, um, we and people want to see them, and they keep doing well, and fans want more of them. We've got ideas for sure. Uh,
Uh, how do you feel about the idea of, I've seen some people have mentioned your name and tapped you as being like maybe potentially starting like a whole cryptid found footagey kind of expanded universe.
uh
Is
huh.
there, you mentioned earlier about like other maybe B class, C class cryptids that people haven't necessarily heard of that are probably super interesting, like Frogman. I would right now, and like you said, I even have some friends who have a pretty big cryptid podcast over on this side of the world, and like I would have said, oh, I've heard of a lot of cryptids, like I know all these different cryptids. And then like, I hear Frogman. I'm like, wow, I feel like Frogman should be like up there with like Bigfoot and stuff because it's such a wild concept. uh, is that something that you would like to be, I guess, shoehorned in for? Like fans calling for, like, let this be the guy that gives us like more of these like characters in some sort of weird extended universe.
Yeah, man, I'm up for that challenge for sure. I mean, there's a lot of stories I want to tell and things I want to do outside of the cryptid world for sure, but I'd say we have a pretty good idea of what we have a pretty good idea of what two Frogman prequels would be, and one of them would focus on a completely different cryptid. We have a pretty good idea of what Frogman 3 would be, um, if 2 does well. And I have at least 3 cryptids I would really like to do standalone movies for, um, before I'm finished in this world, if possible.
Obviously, I would love to ask that question, but I'm pretty sure we probably can't mention any of the specific names because they're probably like super unique ones, I would imagine.
They are. I'll name one. I've mentioned them before. The Flatwoods Monster is one that I really, really want to do, and I think if I only ever do one more cryptid movie, it would be the Flatwoods Monster, because that thing is so creepy and awesome.
Uh, when you think about the potential of doing these other, cryptid movies, if you potentially get to do them, do you see them all in like the found footage format? Is that like the best format, I guess, for telling a story about a potentially real life monster?
I think I have a feeling I would always start at found footage at least.
Mhm.
I think I would always start with the question of like, could this be found footage? Should it be found footage? And just like the conversation we had with Frogman too, it's like if at any point the story is suffering because you're forcing it to be found footage, then let's not make it. Let's not force it to be that.
Yeah.
If we could make a better movie, let's make the best movie possible. But at least right now, the other two, like the two main cryptids I would like to do movies for next, still found footage.
Yeah.
When it comes to Frogman 3, I don't know. It kind of depends on how 2 goes. I could definitely see a Frogman 3 like stepping out of the found footage realm.
Is so I've heard differing opinions on this. A lot of people feel like, oh yeah, like found footage is probably like the cheapest, easiest format to go with. Would you agree with that? Because I've also had other people tell me when they jumped into making a found footage format that, and when I say cheap, I don't mean cheap as in like garbage. I mean as in cheaper than building all these giant sets and trying all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but then I've had people tell me like behind the scenes, been like, uh, a lot more difficult than I thought it was. I think some people think it's just like pick up some cameras and just kind of run around and just wing it, and whatever happens, happens. It's like
Hmm.
not so much so now, especially now because like you mentioned it before, the audience pick up on everything. They'll call bullshit if they see something that's like not right.
Yeah.
Uh, is it more difficult?
It's really difficult. It's a lot more difficult than I thought. Um, yeah, people say found footage is the cheapest. I definitely agree with that. It's definitely the cheapest type of movie you can make because you can, depending on what kind of found footage movie you want to make, you can shoot in a location with minimal crew, minimal lights, you can make it very almost documentary style, which
Mhm.
cuts a lot of cost. A lot of people say making a found footage movie is the easiest type of movie to make. I would say, yeah, that's true. It is the easiest type of movie to make. To make a good found footage movie is really, really fucking hard. It's easy
Yeah.
to make a shit found footage movie. Um, yeah, it came with a lot of difficulties that I did not expect. And there, we paused shooting at one point to rewrite the third act because we started shooting the third act and it just didn't work. Um, and there's some scenes that we shot 3 times over to get right, and a lot of that is a side effect to how loose everything was.
Mm.
Because like when you have something that loose, you're giving it the opportunity to evolve and be something that you didn't necessarily intend for. And I think that's the way to go. I think to try and force it to be the vision that you had you'd probably end up with a lesser movie for it. But if you allow it to become what it wants to become with all the collaborators you're bringing together, um, yeah, you know, it might throw some wrenches in your gears of like what you were intending.
In I don't know if it's done. I assume a lot of it's probably done in post or whatever. But how difficult is it to make a movie look like this does? Because I feel like maybe a lot of people wouldn't associate found footage with like beautiful cinematography or things like that. But there's definitely, I feel like, this a huge amount of effort and purposeful art, I guess, in a way, put into found footage to make it look a certain way. I keep going back to the trailer, because obviously I don't want to reference a huge amount because there's probably still a lot of people out there who are looking to see this movie or haven't seen it yet. And just like if you look at the trailer, like I said, I don't know, I can't really put my finger exactly on what it was, but like I was just blown away by how well put together the trailer seemed. But then at the same time, it's like super kind of chaotic, and it kind of has like, not to compare it to like the Blair Witch Project, but it gave me that kind of feeling where I was like, I was getting just enough, but it was also like pretty kind of wild and chaotic. And I was like, whoa, that's like, what is going on? I need to find out more. Is that something that's like difficult to get across, like for the finished product?
It definitely was a like an experimental process. We actually we intended to shoot the whole movie on a Blackmagic like 6K camera, and then in post make it look like high eight. And I had a high eight camera that was like my dad's high eight camera from when I was a kid, and I had that on set as a prop, but also to like shoot a little bit of reference footage in each location to be like, this is what it should look like. And like day one, shooting those reference shots on the high camera, I realized like, why not just actually shoot the movie on this? Fuck it. Like, this is what we want the movie to look like. So why go through all this trouble and time to make it look like this in post when we could just shoot on it? So we really shot the majority of the movie on a high camera. Um, and then in post to get the glitches, like those are all in camera glitches. There's not a single digital or, you know, effects glitch. It's all when the movie was transferring from the high eight tape to my computer, I would smack the camera when I wanted glitches to happen. And that's how we got that. And there's some stuff we like fed through tape twice to get that kind of tape look to it. And even the stuff that we didn't shoot on high eight, that we did shoot black, like because the scenes at night, um, the high eight camera just couldn't handle. It just looked too muddy and nasty. And if we did need to add any VFX for the creature, it would have been too difficult. So we shot on a Blackmagic, and then put that Blackmagic footage on a high eight tape, and then the high eight tape back to digital. So it's still technically high eight, and it's really hard to find which shots are legit and which aren't.
Going forward, then, see, it's such a weird thing because I agree with what you said earlier about like having the kind of comedy, like the horror kind of comedy aspect to it. Like, is there potential to see maybe a more serious side to Frogman? I can't help but feel like there was certain parts of the movie where I was like, yeah, I'm having fun here. This is like interesting. There's some funny parts, but I don't know. Also in the back of my mind, it was like I can't help but feel like kind of a little bit like unsettled, and like that this guy is maybe a lot more scary than I'm giving him credit for.
So it's funny. Like I totally agree. I feel like there's two directions to go from here, and there's like going even like grittier and more serious and more horror, or going more crazy and fantastical and like doubling down on the magic element and the fact that Frogman has a wand and stuff like that. With Frogman 2, we're definitely going like it's like Gremlins 2 territory. Like we're doubling down on the craziness and the magic, and like all the wacky stuff you see near the end of the movie. Um, if we get to do this prequel that we're talking about, that would be the other direction. That would be like more gritty, more horror focused than comedy focused. So yeah, I think either one would suffer if you tried to balance them both out. And I really want to see both of those directions with this world. So hopefully we can just go both directions depending on what you want.
Yeah, that's I think the exciting thing, and you guys are in a unique position now that like maybe capitalizing on how well this character has kind of come out, and like it almost feels like some kind of like IP already, even though it's not like um so for you guys, obviously without getting like too into detail and stuff, so you decide to put together a script like this, and you know you said your producing partner is Rotting Press. When all those deals and everything get done, then can anybody own like do you own Frogman, or does anybody own like how does that work? Like so from the aspect of like you know merchandise and different things like that, because I feel like this could be quite a profitable character over time. So
Hmm.
how does that work, or is he just like a public domain, like nobody can own him?
Um, I don't know for sure. It's what I would hope is that we own our version of Frogman,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that we made the movie of. I would never want to own Frogman outright. Um, I've heard that somebody did that with Mothman, and that some people who have made Mothman art and are selling it have been uh, brought cease and desist. And I think
Yeah.
that's so fucked up. You should not be able to own Mothman. Like that is an urban legend. No one gets to own Mothman. No one gets to own Bigfoot. No one should own Frogman. So I'd really like to avoid having to get into that legal garbage. This thing is nasty. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is an urban legend that goes back decades, and so is Mothman. It's like, why? Like, what makes you think you have the right to own this creature? You didn't create it. You know, you didn't see it.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's strange.
that's messed up. That pissed me off when I heard about that.
Yeah, I've actually heard of that happening with things even like Bloody Mary and stuff. I know years ago Universal in Orlando tried to do like a Bloody Mary character at their event, and they made up this other like um counter personality for her, and after that 1 year they had to like completely like just erase her from everything because
Mm,
some company owns the Bloody Mary thing, and it's like this whole big thing. But yeah, I was kind of interested to know, like, I guess, yeah, like you said, do you guys own your version of Frogman or whatever? Because it just seems like, uh, you know, with how things are going, I can see him kind of being around. He feels like a character that's like lived in the horror universe for quite a while now. Um, do you like where do you see this going? Then like obviously you mentioned prequels, the sequel and stuff like that. You mentioned even like a part three. Um, is that like what you're, I don't want to say gunning for, but obviously you guys have had some like loose conversations about that potentially being a thing.
hmm Yeah. If if all goes well, if people keep wanting to see Frogman, like I think at least right now the dream would be to be able to do the part three, to do the prequel, and to do at least one cryptid spin-off movie. And then I would feel pretty satisfied, I think. And then who knows? It's so hard to say. Like maybe after all that, it's like, hey, we've got an idea for even more, and I totally want to just do this forever. I'm just gonna be the James Cameron of Frogman. I don't know. But as of right now, I'd like to do those, and then like if people want more of the Frogman universe, like hopefully someone else can come in and play in it. Give someone else a chance to tell a story. But
Yeah.
now you got me thinking. We should probably look into the IP of Frogman, because like if someone else could buy it and cause trouble for us, maybe it's in our best
Hmm.
interest to figure out if we can buy it, just so no one can be an asshole about it. Because like if I could own the IP of Frogman, I would never enforce it
Yeah, but it's
for
just like
anybody. I would just
protect
like,
your own.
yeah, just to own it, to protect everyone that wants to do Frogman art. Because like, you know, if someone else wants to do a Frogman movie, which there have been a couple people that are like, oh, I wanted to do a Frogman movie, I've been like, you should do it. There's
Mm.
like there's enough room in the world for more Frogman movies. There's how many Bigfoot movies are there? You know?
Yeah, and I feel like like a character like Frogman definitely has, in my opinion, actually maybe a bigger sandbox because it's such a while. Like you mentioned, the wand and stuff. I cannot wait to see like where you guys like bring all that and where all that ties in because it's such a like it's such a strange. It's like funny, but then I'm also like massively intrigued. I'm like, okay, so he has a wand. Right. What like where I'm trying to like envision in my mind like where okay, what would he do with this wand? What can this wand do?
Yeah,
Well, like what kind of stuff is he gonna be up to?
that's the question we've been asking ourselves a lot.
Yeah, I would
But you know,
imagine.
the one really fun thing is, you know, there's for like all cryptids across the board, there's this theory of them all being interdimensional.
Mm,
And for me, Frogman is the perfect gateway creature to explore that a little bit more because of the wand.
yeah, yeah, that's true actually. I just have a couple of quick fire questions before I let you go.
Mhm.
Do you have any comfort horror movies that you find yourself revisiting more than others, or maybe like a movie you stick on in the background while you're like doing something else?
Mm. Background movies are tough because I almost always just get sucked into them and then
Yeah,
don't get the work done.
yeah.
But Evil Dead, well, the whole Evil Dead series, but Evil Dead 2 are definitely like big comfort movies for me. But the first
Hmm.
one in particular, like when I watch that movie, I feel like I'm like taking like a weekend sabbatical with my friends at a cabin.
Mm,
Um, you know, even though everything goes horribly wrong, like it's comforting in that respect.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
also one of those movies I saw early on that made me realize like you don't have to be in Hollywood and have a whole lot of money to make a movie. Like you could maybe just go out in the woods by yourself or with friends and make a movie. So that one's really really special to me. Um, I mean, The Fly. I love that movie. Um, Comforting ones are tough. Those are two of the main ones though.
Um, to touch on that, then I guess you mentioned things like Evil Dead and stuff, and I know just from talking to you for the last little while, I can tell that you're quite passionate about things that you find interesting and stuff like that. But obviously, I know as as your name kind of gets out there a bit more, and you start to be talked about a bit more in and out of the business circles. There probably will be offers either already or down the line. Is that something that you would be opposed to? Like, for example, if you got contacted about, well, have you got a take on an Evil Dead movie, or do you have a take on this or that? Is that something that you would even be interested in, like jumping in an existing universe?
Absolutely. I wouldn't rule anything out because I think in in the history of people, jumping into other franchises, um, there's been people that are like diehard fans of those franchises that jump in and do a great job, and there's been instances of people jumping into franchises that they don't really have a love for, and that outside perspective brings something really innovative and like a new take to the table. So I literally wouldn't rule anything out. But it's funny you mentioned Evil Dead because I just watched Infested last night, this new spider movie, and
Yep.
I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. And then today I went down the rabbit hole of like, who is this guy? What else has he done? And it turns out, well, he hasn't done anything else. He did a bunch of shorts and then this one feature, and now he's doing the next Evil Dead movie. So I look at that, I'm like, man, that's all it takes. It takes one good feature, and you can hop into your favorite franchise. So yeah, I'd be super down to pitch.
That's kind of why I asked that question. And we also have an Irish filmmaker here, Lee Cronin, who done Evil Dead Rise,
Yeah.
and it was kind of like I guess a similar thing for him. He kind of like he done one thing and like started to get talked about, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, he has like a meeting with Sam Raimi, and it's like, oh, he's doing the next movie.
Yeah.
And like I remember having that conversation with him as well, and he was like, obviously I could never see myself doing anything else. I didn't want to work in like a grocery store. I didn't want to be a laborer. I didn't want to do any of that. And he was like, but then I always had the imposter syndrome of in the back of my mind going, yeah, but you're never really going to get to make these movies. So like, but he was like, I just continued to do it for some reason. I don't know why, whether it was like some weird like psychotic break I had. And he was like, to be standing here now, like this was at the Irish premiere of Evil Dead. And he's like, to be standing in my hometown with this movie and like my name in the credits is like, it's like I still feel like I'm waiting for people to like find me out
Yeah.
and be like, oh, he's
Yeah.
he's a fake, he's a phony or whatever. And that's kind of why I asked that question, because I feel like that the love that you're being given from this now, and I feel like people are kind of, I guess, almost like going backwards. They've seen this movie and then they've, like you just mentioned, they've looked at your name and then they're like, oh wait, he done this thing, and all right, okay, he done these shorts, and like they're trying to like look at that stuff now. And I feel like that there's probably huge potential there for you to, over time now, maybe be in those conversations for different things. Is there obviously I know you mentioned Evil Dead, but if there was one that you could choose, is there any other that like sticks out that you would be like, yeah, I would love to give like my version or my like spin-off of that?
Man, I know I had an answer to this for a long time, and I think Frogman has just wiped my memory of any other like dream projects. God, what was it? Boy, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I'll message
That's
you if I remember it. But I
that's how
yeah,
successful Frogman is going to be.
yeah. Those I mean, those guys give us hope, like all of us filmmakers that are dreaming of doing this, on a bigger level and as a career, like see someone go from like Hole in the Ground to Evil Dead, or uh, you know, Infected to Evil Dead, or even Fede Alvarez. I don't think he had done a single feature maybe before he did the remake. He had like that one short that went viral and then got Evil Dead. And now he's doing Alien. My God, like it's crazy. And I think, yeah, I'm sure you have to feel that, like, that imposter syndrome never goes away, like I said, because to be at a premiere of an Evil Dead movie you made, like, yeah, and wondering if people are gonna find you out. I mean, I don't I can't imagine you would be a very good filmmaker if you got into this thinking, I deserve an Evil Dead movie.
Mm.
I deserve to do the next Alien. I think you have to have like a bit of humility to you to be good enough to get to that level. So you probably get to that level and think like, what the hell am I doing here? Do I deserve this?
Yeah, like the amount of people I've talked to that mentioned imposter syndrome and the fact that like it never truly goes away. I always ask that question, like, yeah, it just doesn't seem to matter. There's always a degree of it there. Obviously, there's varying degrees. Like you said, there's times where you probably have to try and bring yourself back a bit and be like, no, no, I'm here for a reason.
Yeah,
This is all happening for a reason. It's not some sort of like I didn't just happen to fall into this. Like I've put in the work. I've been around this for 10 years, 15 years, whatever.
yeah.
What's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody? Doesn't even have to be you can make it specific, I guess, about filmmaking, but just somebody following a dream like that is, not seen as like your common, I guess, your common dream. A lot of people want to be a lawyer, a doctor, not to knock any of those things, but they seem like a more solidified route
Hmm.
to be able to get to. Whereas like I feel like film and stuff like that is, like you said, it can be very volatile. It's very up and down. You don't know where your next paycheck is. You don't know what's happening. Is there a piece of advice that you would give to someone following that dream?
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the kind of advice that I used to hear that, I was like, well, that's not very helpful, but it really is. Like, you just got to stick with it and keep making stuff. Like, that's,
Mm.
unless you have, you know access to money to make a massive movie right out the gate, or you have, you know a uncle that works for Disney or whatever. Like, if you're, I mean, if you like, basically, if you're starting with nothing and you want to make movies, then all you can do is make movies. That's where you start. Find like-minded people that that believe in the type of stuff that you want to make. You know, find a film family. Everyone that I made Frogman with, I've been working with for, you know, over a decade in some way, shape, or form in film. And something I wish I would have done a long time ago that I'm just trying to figure out now is like find a different stream of income if you can. I mean, I've had day jobs this entire time, um, which is very time consuming. Like, I get clever. Like, I don't know, invest, learn how to do stocks or something, or uh, so, I don't know. You know, like finding another stream of income so you don't have to panic about, oh, I have to give up film entirely so that I can go make money. That would be a huge, huge weight lifted on anyone that's trying to go down this path. Also, I just remembered I'd love to do a Hellraiser movie.
Oh, nice.
And I have an idea of a stuff remake, the stuff that I would love to do.
Nice. I like that. That's kind of like a little bit unique as well, because I feel like that's a huge like brand, but like nobody's really tried to do anything like cool or unique or like
Yeah,
bring it into like the modern day. And I feel like that would be such a good like tie-in with like nostalgia and kind of like that old school feel.
yeah. There's just one for some
Yeah.
reason, and I think it's a really, really juicy world to play in more.
To before I ask the last question, to just to touch on what you just said there about, you know, having a day job and stuff like that. How difficult is that to, I guess, juggle all those things? I don't know if you mentioned earlier that you have a girlfriend or a partner, you know, and then trying to have like a day job for like a little bit more stability, and then trying to work on all of this stuff. How difficult is it, I guess, to juggle all those plates? And is there anything that you do in specific to try and keep your head above water?
Hmm. Um, yeah, it's really difficult. um, I mean, I've had moments of having day jobs that have nothing to do with film, and those are incredibly time consuming. And I think for anyone that's ever worked like a 9 to 5, by the time you hit 5 o'clock, you don't really have the bandwidth to relax, you know, or do the mundane shit that we all have to do, like your laundry, you know, or cook dinner.
Yep.
So when I've been in those jobs, it's been really, really hard to give any of my energy to like a personal project. But I was fortunate enough to figure out how to have a day job in film, where I grip on commercials and mostly features, which, you know, features will eat up a month of my time where I get almost nothing done on a personal project level. But I'm still in the film world and I'm feeling really energized and excited about that. And I'm learning a lot, and I'm learning, you know, valuable like skills about how to make a feature, or I'm seeing mistakes made and like learning what not to do.
Mm.
um, every time I've been on a feature, regardless of what it is, I've worked on Hallmark Christmas movies and I've worked on indie horror movies. They're all energizing for me creatively because I'm just so excited about making movies. So I'd say if you can find a day job or another form of income in the film world, that can be really beneficial because you're making money, you're probably finding inspiration, you're learning a lot, you're making connections. Um, yeah, I mean that's been really, really valuable. So look into other things that you might be qualified for, whether it's editing or, you know, camera operating, or like I said, gripping, which is like, you know, working with like rigging and lighting and stuff. It's almost like more of a like an engineer's side of a creative mindset for film.
Uh, one personal and one professional goal that you have, the first thing that pops into your mind.
A personal goal would to be to find calm
Mm,
and uh like, yeah, acceptance with where I am, because I feel like I have the tendency, probably from the anxiety of choosing this career, to always look at what's next.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, should I be here or should I move here? Maybe I'll have more opportunities here. Maybe I should do this next, you know, like, so to just be somewhere and be like, this is home and this is cool, and like get up
Mhm.
every day. And I have that a little bit right now, but even here it's shaky. And I'm like, God, should I go back to LA? Maybe there's more to do in LA. So that's a personal goal. Professionally, the biggest goal is to just direct full time. Like right now going into Frogman 2, I'm still having to find other ways to make money. um, so that would be incredible to it someday be freed up to, like, I'm only working on the next project would be a dream come true.
It's something, and I love, for as like painful and difficult as I imagine it can be at times to be in that position. I love when someone mentions that though, because there's so many people that listen that are aspiring filmmakers or writers, directors, whatever. And I think they assume, they would say, oh, well, Anthony's doing Frogman and whatever. He's obviously just like, that's his day now. He gets to like sit around and have coffee and stuff and just like talk about Frogman 2 and the Frogman universe and doesn't have to do anything else, only that. Um, and I just like when someone gives the, I guess, the real version of like, no, no, it's gonna be really difficult, and it's not a, it's that thing of like the 10-year overnight success.
Yeah,
It's like everyone feels like, oh, dude, it must be so cool to make a movie like Frogman. It's like, yeah, but I've been doing this shit for over a decade, like with no real tanks or any sort of like anything back.
yeah, yeah. And I'm legitimately on the job hunt right now. I'm looking for work because I dedicated the majority of the, like, this year so far to promoting Frogman, going to screenings, like all that kind of stuff, and not making a whole lot of money. And just doing the math of how much of my time Frogman 2 is going to eat up from here until release. Yeah, right now my big goal, my mission right now is to find a consistent paycheck so that I can make Frogman 2.
You heard it here first, guys. Final question then. Why horror, and what does it mean to you?
Um, I think it's such a fun genre to play in because you can literally mash it up with any other genre, and other genres don't necessarily have that to the same effect. But you can do horror comedy, you can do a horror musical, you could do a horror romance, you could do a horror mumblecore. You can do anything. Horror can be one character. Horror can be, a globe trotting, like World War Z thing. So it's just so versatile. Um, I love monsters. I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. It has all of that.
Mhm.
Um, and the metaphors are just so juicy. And honestly, I think horror recently has become a little too surface level, where like the metaphors are like right on top instead of buried,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which don't work as well. And Infested is a great example of a horror movie done right, where you watch it and you can just enjoy a killer spider movie. But when you
Mm.
hear this guy talk about what this movie meant to him, it was all about spiders being a metaphor for the human characters in the movie who are kind of living in this like somewhat slummy apartment building, um, and are good people and don't mean any harm, but are just judged for how
Mhm.
their appearance. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's so brilliant. Like it's not preachy. Um, but I love that about horror. Is like, I mean, almost any horror movie is about something. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
buried really deep. Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, perfect example of movies that are about these social issues that were really important to George Romero, and he got them out through a zombie movie.
Yeah, which is like it's kind of a crazy concept when you think about it, because I feel like a lot of people out there don't give it credit. It's a strange place, I think, horror, because a lot of what I would call like the mainstream people tend to shit on it quite a bit, but then at the same time, they also tend to cash in on it quite a bit because it always seems to make money for the
Yeah.
most part. So it's like it's kind of a weird, like it's like the redheaded stepchild.
Yep. Yep. And if it has a lull, then it just gets shit on even more. And if
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
having a moment like it is this year, then everyone's on board suddenly.
yeah. It's a strange one. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. I hope we can do it again down the line, maybe when it's closer to Frogman too.
Mm-hmm.
and we'll be able to like dive into that and some more of what's going on with you. For everybody listening, you know, whether it's on YouTube, Allcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, all the links to Anthony's stuff, the movie, all the links to wherever it's streaming and things like that where you can rent it will all be down below in the description. So make sure and check those out. And yeah, man, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time and wish you all the best.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man.